Well, Vietnam was the major thing. In the very beginning, I had accepted a few articles that was sort of claiming that Vietnam was a reasonable thing to be doing. We had to fight communism, but Chicago educated me enough to realize that, I started reading other the New Republic and then Ramparts and and reading history and learning more about American foreign policy, and became very clear that it was a terrible thing we were doing. And we formed, some people in the medical community in Denver formed a group, an anti-war group. We were doing things like renting movie theaters and showing, like, there was a guy named Felix Green who produced some very good films. And so we were just doing the best we could. And then Bobby Kennedy was the guy, after his brother was assassinated, he was the guy who finally came along when Lyndon Johnson was not going to run again. And it was clear to me he was the one we needed to get out of that war and to move on to domestic reform, deal with civil rights and all the rest. And so I was totally committed to the guy. And so I started working for the campaign. I didn't have any particular prominence there, but they gave, I was totally dedicated to it. And the night he was assassinated, I was on assignment in this small county in eastern Colorado to try to get people to support him for the nomination. And that night I came back home and turned on the TV only to learn that he had been shot. And it was, I had something that never happened to me before or since. I suddenly had this back spasm and I collapsed. I couldn't stand up. And it took me about 20 minutes before I could stand up. And then I was fine. But it was kind of an example of a bodily reaction to an emotional stress or trauma that, at any rate, it was real hard to get over that. Because it's kind of like you really have belief in something and then it's gone. And I had a period of mourning like many other people, I'm sure. So I kept his picture for a long time. That's why you saw it in my house. And then you asked me about Malcolm X. Well, he's, again, as I was gradually learning at that phase of my life not to trust that what you were hearing in the mainstream was going to be something I should believe necessarily. Everybody hated Malcolm X. He was saying...
Can you repeat that line, starting with everybody hated
Malcolm X? Yeah, everybody hated Malcolm X because he was saying things which scared people. He was saying, and he was taking positions which later he didn't agree with, back to Africa ideas and complete separation. But he matured and became such an articulate spokesman. And then when I read the biography, from then on, I was teaching some classes at the local community college. And that's the book I would recommend to people. And I would say, just read this guy. And Alex Haley did a beautiful job of pulling that together. And here's a guy who went from being just a street hood, Malcolm Little, as I recall. But he discovered that he could talk and started talking to other prisoners and got into the black Muslim movement. But the main thing is, what I'm talking about is that he transformed himself he studied the dictionary and started studying a lot of things and became this amazing spokesman for black pride and the idea that we're going to have to get in the face of the white community. We cannot, the Martin Luther King approach, which we all respect, it's not a matter of competition here, but Malcolm X's approach at that time was, if you're too comfortable to be with, if the white society isn't pushed enough, they are not going to respond. And I totally came to believe that and feel that he played a critical role in the kind of movement, which, I mean, despite all the problems, we did make progress. Both are going on. So those are two heroes of mine at that time, yeah, for sure.